Kubo! Kubo! We need to go now.
My father's fortress. This way!
Claim your birthright, Kubo.
If you must blink, do it now.
Hello and welcome to In Case You Missed It, the podcast where we talk about movies that didn't quite succeed that we think should have, or maybe it's just a movie that you haven't thought about in a while. I'm Scott Schultes. I'm here with my co-host, Josh Reese.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the movie Kubo in the Two Strings. It's a stop motion animation. I guess it's a kid's movie. I struggled if this was actually a kid's movie.
Me too.
Because, and we'll talk about it. It's kind of heavy and it's kind of scary in places. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. But I enjoy it. I like it. It's sort of just this fun, imaginative fairy tale. And frankly, I never know how to pronounce the studio's name. LAIKA?
LAIKA, yeah, I think it's LAIKA.
LAIKA. The fact that these guys want to keep making stop motion movies, even though I'm pretty sure there has to be casualties on every one, because I just can't imagine doing a stop motion movie. But no, but it's a great movie, and it is about a boy named Kubo who is taking care of his mother, and he seems to have this sort of magical powers that we see at the beginning, where he can he plays a shamisen.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to pronounce that, but yeah,
I think it's shamisen. If not, whatever. But he can play that, and it can sort of fold paper into origami, and it can move and stuff like that. And we find out he is being pursued by his two aunts and his grandfather for reasons we don't know, and that his father actually died. His father died allowing Kubo and his mother to escape, and eventually his aunts find him, and his mother uses the last of her magic to sort of let Kubo escape, and then he is on a journey to find two pieces of armor and a sword to help defeat his aunts and his grandfather. Mm-hmm. Did I sum that up well enough?
That was great. That was a good kicking off of how we're getting into it.
Awesome. Good show, everyone. We'll see everyone next month. Now, I have seen this movie. Well, for this, I watched it 3 times. I don't remember what made me want to watch it in the first place, but I think it was just, I love a movie that looks like it has a lot of imagination. Mm-hmm. Josh has never seen this movie. And so, like Moneyball, I'm anxious to see what Josh thinks of Kubo and the Two Strings.
So this is one that I've always wanted to watch. I think it, like, just from the trailers that I've seen and everything, the animation, it looks incredible. And I always like to see stop motion animation. For some reason with LAIKA, I know this was their 4th movie, and before this they did Coraline, Paranorman, and Box Trolls, which I'd seen all those, although for some reason I just never emotionally connected to any of them. I think they're really well made. I think they look incredible, but I just never really connected with them. So
yeah, I've never seen any of them. I don't know. Coraline, I think, probably had the biggest run. Yeah. But it was weird. If you talk to people who've seen it, nobody made it sound like, well, you have to go watch this movie.
Right. Yeah. But with this one, I loved the story. I thought it was just incredibly emotional. And like we said, like, not sure if it's a kid's movie. It's really dark in the beginning. I mean, you learn that this grandfather stole his grandson's eye and is like trying to take the other one. Really dark stuff, but and almost in some early moments, like with his aunts, feels almost like a horror movie. But I think the story is so well done, and just something that we don't see very often. It's kind of an epic fantasy. But
Yeah.
just very emotional and like hits on themes that I feel like you don't see very often in animated movies or kids movies. I mean, definitely has like, you know, the lost parents or like dead parents, which is a huge thing as always in Disney. But it's really interesting how it's done here, in that, well, I guess we'll get into more of that later, but no, overall, I thought this story was really incredible. And just the animation was so cool. And I think the the biggest thing I kept saying as I was watching it with the stop motion animation, or if you don't know what stop motion is, it's literally they have models of these characters and everything going on in the scene, and they're taking one picture at a time and moving these figures to make 24 frames in a second. So every second is 24 pictures, and they're literally hand moving them or using some kind of, you know, things to move everything in the scene. And what's so cool is there's so many things that are literally in the air in this movie, which is like in stop motion, that's not very, a very friendly thing. So the amount of work that it must have taken to do these things is just kind of mind blowing. And I know that they integrated a lot of like visual effects and CG work, computer generated work to kind of help with that. But a lot of it, I mean, most of it's still practical. I know like the water and the rain and stuff is a lot of computer generated, but it's integrated so well that it all feels like one piece.
And it actually, as I was looking at stuff, I think specifically the water, I think the assumption is that all the water would be CG, but a large amount of it was practical. It's, as I was watching behind the scenes stuff, it's, it does, you know, they aren't shy about saying that they used computer generated graphics to extend sets or do other things, fill in the backgrounds. But I think it's less than you might think, which is hard to believe. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that you would assume would have been so difficult to do. They would have done it in post, and they actually did do it. They did do it practically.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think it's a beautiful story. I actually kept looking. This feels like the kind of thing. It's so layered. The way it escalates. I just assumed this was an adaptation, a direct adaptation of something. One of the writers, Shannon Tyndall, started developing the story in 2001, and just all I could find was that it was inspired by personal experiences, Japanese folk tales. And there was the work of Japanese animator Hayao Miyazaki.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wait, that's not the Studio Ghibli guy, is it?
It is. Yeah. I know that was like a big influence for this.
And so that's, but I like, and I also saw something that, you know, part of the story came from Tyndall's mother-in-law had been diagnosed with dementia and all this other stuff. So yeah, I guess I feel like I wish there were more movies like this, like just something. It's nice that Laika has, they aren't a huge studio. I think they are probably at best doing enough to keep themselves afloat. But they're not an enormous studio, but I like that they're using that to not play it safe either. I think they're doing a lot of original work. I think there's nothing wrong with being inspired by something. That's how we get new work. But I think you always get. It's nice to get signs too that there are pockets of Hollywood that are still very much just about doing good, fun, original work. I think that's evident in the fact that this cast is stacked.
It is. It really is.
Charlize Theron, Art Parkinson, who was in Game of Thrones, Ralph Fiennes, Matthew McConaughey, George Takei's in this. I think he has maybe 3 lines.
Yeah, but he's billed so high. it's funny.
Yeah, you almost wonder, like you kind of wonder if he was in more of it originally, and his character's just. He's got a name. His character has a name, but he could almost just be like villager number 3. Like it's weird that Rooney Mara's in this as well. But I think it was just the fact that it's a great script and really grabs a hold of you.
Yeah.
So I think they do a good job at the beginning of. I love the idea because so at the beginning, Kubo's mother, and I don't know if we get specifics on this, but she kind of seems to go through these cycles of like she's in a trance, she doesn't speak, she doesn't react to anything. You see him having to feed her, and then it seems like in the evenings she kind of comes back to life. Until a certain point at night, and then she kind of goes back into this trance. But I like how they started with her in this trance, which gives you a great sense of the kind of person Kubo is, and that he's giving and responsible, and I like that he's kind of a showman. He does the show, and also I thought it was interesting. So he goes down to the village, and the way he seems to make money, I think, is that he does his little origami thing where he tells a story. But he has to be home by night, and he seems to go out like he's eager to go out in the morning, and he goes to the village. And then when he's done with the story, he's got to run back home before dark. Was he telling this story for 16 hours?
That's a good question.
Like from dawn until dusk, was he telling the story? And weirder than that, does nobody in that village have anything better to do to watch than watch this story for 16 hours?
And I know it's like he keeps telling the story, and he never gets to the end of it just because he doesn't know the end of it. But these people keep watching. And are they watching the same story over and over? I mean, it's a great show with the origami and everything. I'm sure people are entertained by it, and something they don't see very often. But yeah, how long is he telling this story?
Yeah, and he's and the story he's telling is about his father, Hanzo.
Yeah,
it was Hanzo, right? Yeah, I only watched it last night. Why would I remember? But yeah, which is a big thing because he loves. Yeah, he doesn't know how the story ends because he didn't know his father. So, but yeah, I was just kind of surprised. And you would think if he's telling that story for all damn day, he could trim some of it out to get to the end if it's taking him all day to do it. So
that's so true. That's it. You're saying about how his mother is kind of like, in a trance most of the. At one point I was thinking like, is she lying to him and did she actually kidnap him? Is she going to be the villain in this thing? At one point I was like, is that what's happening here? We find out that that's not the case, but I think it's interesting that they don't make it super clear in the beginning what's going on with her and everything. And really, and we didn't even talk about that opening sequence with the ocean when we see them arrive. Just such a cool way to start this movie with that image of the moon and then the ocean. And we're talking about like the water effects, which just look incredible. And I think I actually saw that Travis Knight, he said once they like landed on the beach, he did some of the animation himself because he's been like an animator with LAIKA. And he did that sequence where she's kind of crawling over to him, and it's crazy. I saw that Kubo's with the stop motion animation, Kubo has like 48 million different facial variations that he can do with the pieces that they created, which is insane.
They I was actually wondering as I'm watching this, because almost every form of movie making has had some technological evolution, usually to kind of streamline the process. And I was actually thinking stop motion probably doesn't have it, but they said what they can do is 3D print faces, which gives them more expressions. Yeah, that Kubo alone has 23,187 faces.
Yeah.
And it's broken into various parts, which can make up to 48 million expressions.
That's crazy. And he said that in that sequence, like the baby Kubo, the model for the baby was like as big as his thumb. So it was very precise with that of like using tweezers to like move the pieces of his face just in that sequence alone where he's on the beach as a baby.
And that's interesting. He was so tiny because one thing I found that was interesting behind the scenes is, you have to, they make the puppets pretty big.
Yeah.
Because Kubo alone was maybe a foot tall, his one. And he's one of the shorter characters. So a lot of them they're taller. Later in the movie, there's a giant skeleton monster that they fight. And the puppet was 16 feet or 18 feet tall. I saw two different things. I guess Travis, I heard say 16 feet tall. So that's probably right. But just enormous. Kind of stuff. And yeah, so you work on that scale is I'm sure very challenging.
And I saw that even with that skeleton, like they said on a slow day, they would get like 8 frames a day. Like in a quick day, they'd get 18 frames a day, which is less than a second of footage, which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, this is such like you said, Josh, it's taking one picture at a time. It's posing and reposing. And because I saw this movie took 5 years to make, but because this is so time consuming, you want to get the movie planned out as much as possible before you start shooting. So they spent 3 years developing the script, getting storyboards done, and then spent 2 years shooting, which I can't believe that's how long it took. But a lot of live action movies, it depends. I mean, a lot of live action movies are shot anywhere from 30 days to, I don't know, 200's probably the most you're going to see.
Yeah.
So to spend 2 years shooting and hoping it all works by the end would be just stressful. And
it's funny. I was listening to Travis Knight talk about on the director's commentary, how like on these movies, they really use everything that they shoot. They're not like getting coverage of like other things here. They're basically making the movie as they go, like exactly how they want to, and trying to use everything so they're not wasting any time, which is crazy. And just the amount of patience that I'm sure the animators have to have is insane. And I saw that LAIKA Studios actually has yoga classes and a masseuse on location for the animators because they spend 12 hours a day just in probably not very comfortable positions.
I bet that, and I just assume that studio is just super hot. Like I bet that's just miserable and crawling all over it. And you said patience. When you do this, you would have to. It's the fact that you would spend a day getting 8 frames, and then you may spend a week getting a shot done, and then you go in and you're like, it's not working. We got to redo it. So that would there's that, and like you said, they plan, and this is true of pretty much all animation, that they, like a live action movie, you have a script, but you kind of film it and then you edit. Well, an animated movie tends to, you have a script and you basically edit it before you shoot it. That's what they do with storyboards, which if you don't know is like, it's almost like you draw little pictures to show every shot of the movie. It's kind of like a comic book version of the movie.
Yeah.
So they do that because animation takes so long that you have to plan all this out, because you're just trying to streamline the amount of time you have to spend actually piecing shots together.
Yeah.
And this is why actually stop motion has fallen out of favor. It's why you don't see it as much as you used to, because it's very expensive. It's very time consuming. Mm-hmm. And in this day and age, I got to think certainly a big studio is going to say, why can't we just 3D animate this?
Right. Yeah. And then at what point do you does CG start taking over to where it's like no longer is technically even stop motion anymore? I mean, this movie was pretty much most of it stop motion with just some CG integrated, but I'm sure there's moments where they will just want to be like, can't we just throw this into the computer and get it done?
And I think, unfortunately, what probably hurt stop motion even more, I think, was probably the Lego movie. Correct me if I'm wrong, like that's all CG, but they designed it in a way to look almost stop motion. So that probably hurt stop motion as well. But I there is something to be said for the fact that, because as much as they try to be as precise as they can when they do stop motion, it's never going to be flawless. And so I think that's kind of what keeps it interesting, is that, and even Travis Knight said that, like he says, there's imperfections in every single frame. And there's something to that. I see parts where in this movie where the mouths don't necessarily line up, with the audio, or, you know, maybe if you look really close, timing's a little off, or a little, you know, there's little things. Doesn't hurt your immersion at all.
No.
And I don't want to make it sound like this movie doesn't look incredible. It absolutely looks incredible.
Yeah.
Monkey, I think, is amazing. Just the fact that the model looks great. But with all that fake fur on it, the fact that they have to move it around but keep the fur the same is incredible.
And I wonder, in like, you know, talking about like how the mouths maybe don't match up on the dialogue, I couldn't really find an answer on like how they record like the dialogue for this movie and have it match. Like, that's the thing that I'm like kind of most impressed with the animators, is like they're shooting this one frame at a time and have to move the mouth to match, to make the dialogue. And it's not always going to be perfect, but like, how do they, like, I just want to know how they know how much they need to move it and what, like, just to get those performances. And are the actors having to match to that as they're watching? Exactly.
I mean, I would assume, because you don't want to, in most cases, you don't want to restrict your actors. It's, you hired those actors for their performance. I would assume you record it first. If I had to guess, you record it first and then you match it to that. And I think it is the tedium of, you know, Charlize Theron in this specific line spent 8 frames saying the word Kubo, and it's probably broken into syllables, 4 frames of ku, 4 frames of bo, and that's how they have to animate it. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why everyone doesn't want to do this for a living.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because like I went to school wanting to do visual effects work. I think it was like the first Transformers movie that I saw. I was like, man, that's so cool, and I want to like do that. But then I saw, it was actually after I saw Avatar where I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to do visual effects. And the reason for that was I knew that the tedious amount of time that it takes to do that work, and for it to come out with how I felt about that movie, which is that I was not a fan of it, really.
Wasn't worth it.
Yeah. It wasn't worth all that to tell that story. It didn't seem like it to me. I mean, sure, it's a big innovation in film and everything, but to do all that work on a story that didn't have any meaning to me, really, kind of made me reel back on that.
And also, for what it's worth, like at a big movie like that, for visual effects, you're handling a piece of it. When you see one of the Na'vi on screen, it's not like one person did it. Somebody else has made the model. Somebody's doing the animation. Somebody's doing the compositing so it blends with the shot. Somebody's doing the lighting so it blends with the shot. Yeah, so you just have a piece of it, which kind of makes me think this is why people still do stop motion animation, because there's probably something that feels very personal about getting to have your hands on it. And like you said, Travis did the opening shot, one of the opening shots with his, like, he probably feels like he owns that shot because that was his.
Yeah, I kept noticing like I was kind of listening through the commentary, and like he would be like, "Oh, this sequence, this animator did this and this," and so it's kind of like one animator almost takes each sequence and does their thing with it. So it doesn't feel like it's a big like hands-on thing with a bunch of people all at one time. It seems like it's very like personal work with like one animator, maybe 2 within each sequence to make it work, which is really cool. I think makes it a little more intimate feeling,
and just all the detail you have to do, and like you said, yeah, I would think one animator would be in charge of one shot. There's probably some exceptions to that. I'm sure moving that giant skeleton takes quite a few people, but I think that's probably why some people, like, I wouldn't feel. Yes, it's cool to say you were on something as big as, you know, Avatar, but I feel like there's less of a personal connection to any of that. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of that work that the VFX artists, who did do a good job. We're not trying to say they did an excellent job, but I doubt I bet there's shots of them that they don't even remember like what they did and didn't work on. So Kubo, as we said, he gets his mother tells him that he can't go out after night, and he ends up actually, and I forget what they call it. It's a festival sort of like honoring the dead. and he tries to talk to his father. He ends up out at night after dark, and his aunts find him, who are so scary. Like
this moment, I was like, this is a horror movie,
right?
Here.
It is terrifying, which does make me, and I think I said this to you because you said something about showing it to your kids. Like we said, like it's very bright and vibrant and funny. It's very funny. Yeah,
it is.
But there are parts of it that it's kind of violent, and those sisters are terrifying. And so, which really begs the question: who's this movie for?
Yeah, maybe that's the reason that it didn't succeed as well as they would have liked. But I don't know. Which
is not a criticism of the quality, but outside of people like us, will watch almost anything. I think that's why it. I think that's why it didn't. I think it was one of their lowest performing movies. I think it still made money, but I think it made 73 million, it was their first one to not make over 100 million though. But anyway, so his sisters, not his sisters, his mom's sisters, his aunts, they're coming to get him, and his mom uses the last of her magic to banish him. I don't think we really find out where. He just wakes up in the snow with a monkey. Yeah. And which is kind of interesting because I've realized this movie is worth multiple watches. So he wakes up in the snow with a monkey. But this movie's worth multiple watches because like one of the very first shots of him after the opening is his you see the statue of the monkey. Like it's kind of a thing where if you've seen the movie and you know what happens, when you watch it more and more, it's fun to pick up on little details that sort of appear, foreshadowing things and stuff like that. So he wakes up with this monkey, and he's supposed to find. They have to find. It's a piece of armor, it's a helmet, and a sword, and that's what he's gonna. He's gonna get to kill his grandfather and his.
And it's Hanzo's.
Is it his stuff?
Armor.
Okay, I thought it was.
Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah. So they have to find that, and that's really the journey, and they actually end up coming across this giant beetle samurai, who's played by Matthew McConaughey, who I feel like, I don't know. I think this is his funniest role. I don't know.
It is.
He's been funny. I think he's hilarious in this.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's kind of like it took me a long time to get used to his face because his face looks so almost creepy in a way, but like also, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It took me a minute to get used to the look of him. Mm-hmm. But I think that his voice and just like the kind of silliness of it kind of helps put that character into a certain place. It's really fun. And he almost feels like childlike. Yeah. Cause he's lost his memory, which is cool. He remembers, all he really remembers was he was actually a samurai of Hanzo's, but he doesn't remember anything else. He doesn't remember his name. But it's a cool design. I guess, and I forget where he's supposed to be from. Is it Kyoto? Kind of wherever his like the inspiration for his armor or wherever he's supposed to be from. I guess in Japan, if I'm remembering this right, that's kind of common to give people like that sort of almost a Western American accent, I guess is very common. Yeah. I didn't find out why that is. I don't know, maybe Kyoto samurai in Kyoto say things like y'all and grits. I don't know. But yeah, so that's why that fits, is his accent. Oh, one thing I wanted to touch on back in the festival where he's performing is the woman that he talks to, that he like goes and sees every day, the old woman. There's her facial animation is so well done. It feels like, it doesn't feel like it's like a hard face. Like it doesn't feel like it's just pieces put on it. There's movement in almost the skin, and like her cheeks are like big, and you can see a lot of movement. I think that's for some reason that facial animation was like the most impressive one to me in the
Yes,
movie.
you're right. I thought that too, that it looks like skin stretched over like a skull and muscles, and it looks so much like one solid piece, but it's very expressive. Yeah, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
That's actually on top of that. Yeah, there's little details in animation that like I noticed. There's a lot of times where Kubo specifically, like his hair's flowing. Or sometimes he uses magic to fly and his hair kind of goes up. And I thought, how do you do that? And I guess his hair is made from real human hair. And I guess they would
cool.
like comb silicone through it. So it's more durable, but it also holds its shape. So then they have to, I would love to be at that production meeting where they said, and guess what? You get to animate every strand of hair on his head.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to do details like that. Same with the clothes. Or rather they put like rods through the clothes and everything just so they could kind of animate that. Just to give them complete control over every aspect of this.
But like back with Beetle, I think it's like right away you just see like how kind of silly he is, and like, you know, he's lost his memories and things. And it's fun. There's like the moment where Monkey's like, don't touch anything, and of course he's touching stuff like a child and breaks something off, and then he's clearly he did it, but he's like he did it. He points to Kubo. And just very funny dynamic between the two.
Which we'll have to get back to. I'm struggling to talk about some of this stuff because I'm sure we'll get to spoilers later, but I don't want to jump on it too quickly about all some of this stuff. But yeah, so they go into the they go into this. Is it a cave? It's the cave with the sword. And they fight this giant skeleton, which is a very cool fight sequence. It's just the idea of this enormous puppet that they created, and I guess at least the top half of the skeleton they put on. Like if you go into like you see like those really fancy flight simulators or something like that where it actually can move the whole car. That's basically what they put this skeleton on. Is this giant car so it can like rotate and stuff.
Yeah. This sequence must have just taken, I mean, I haven't calculated how many, they're getting like less than a second a day. It must have taken weeks and weeks. I mean, months probably just to do this. And it must have been a lot of overlapping. Like, I mean, all this I'm sure was happening like all at once in different parts of the studio. Cause you can't just, I mean, if you would have animated everything just one sequence at a time, this would have taken like 30 years to make probably.
Yeah. I'm sure they're working on different stuff. It looked to me, and I'm just speculating, but some of the behind the scenes stuff, because I noticed a lot of stuff where when they would be animating a single character in a scene with multiple characters, they'd put a green screen behind them. And I wonder if in a scene with multiple characters, they would almost animate each one individually. Like have animate Monkey's part, but if Kubo's in the background, animate Kubo later, but you put a green screen behind Monkey so you can cut her out. And I have to think that's so if you animate like 4 characters at once and one of them's off, you got to animate all of them again. So I would think they would have a process where, okay, well, we only have to reanimate Kubo in this because, you know, you kind of layer all the characters.
Definitely. And I wonder like how much, I'm sure all those animators they're all incredible at their job, but I just wonder how many like mistakes were made, if any. I'm sure there were some, but like how much time was lost in any of these sequences would be an interesting thing to find out. I'm sure they don't want to even think about that though.
This story escalates really well. I think I think it's a good example of like never tell the audience anything more than they need to know, or don't tell them anything they need to know before they need to know it. So there's a sequence on where Kubo makes this boat out of like sticks and leaves and junk, and they're sailing across a lake, and his ants find them, or one of them does, and there's a big battle scene. It's actually a great scene because there's monkeys on the ship fighting the sister, and then Kubo and Beetle are underwater trying to grab the armor, And that's like a giant eyeball monster that is, if you look into the eyes, you get put in this trance. And you kind of just like, you see Kubo, he starts to like sink into its mouth and Beetle saves it. It's an amazing sequence. And in this scene, towards the end of it, and I love the way they build to this, but you find out that Monkey is like, it's his mom. It's Kubo's mom.
Yeah.
Sort of she sort of like put her spirit in the monkey. And again, you see this monkey doll at the beginning and that he was always supposed to have it with him. And so you learn that's her, but they just build, they build so well to that. And Kubo kind of has a vision, but that's like, and I don't know what that is, like halfway through the movie.
Yeah, probably.
Like, I just think the whole movie kind of, it has this great stepping stone, this great escalation, you know. You have all these revelations throughout that really keep you invested in it.
Yeah. And there's little like foreshadowing like things too within there where it's like, you know, the monkey has kind of a scar across one eye, which it's on the opposite eye of the mother, but it's still there. Just little things that where it's not just thrown at you. It's like it organically builds.
Yeah,
to
that's what I was saying when I thought this is a movie that's really worth watching more than once because, mom has a scar. Monkey has a scar. I'm not really sure why they're on opposite eyes. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, Travis Knight on the director's commentary, he said that it's like a mirror image, but I don't know exactly what the intention of that is. He didn't really get into
just
it.
It's a mirror image, but yeah, it's the monkey has a scar, and you know what's interesting because like Charlize Theron. It's weird because she would voice his mom, but also the monkey. But you don't know, for some reason, at least I didn't. When Monkey starts talking, it doesn't sound like the same person.
No,
that wasn't the immediately apparent. I don't know if it was to some people, but it's not immediately obvious to me that this is the same voice.
Yeah, it was slightly different. I was like, is that? And after a while, it's like, is that her voice? But it's not quite the same. Which is impressive. And I avoided going to IMDb to look up who was voicing anybody else to a fear of like, I don't want to spoil anything of what actors might be playing if it's the same people. But yeah, it's just a slightly different enough that it's not obvious. And still is a nice surprise later. Yeah.
And now we find out in the scene after the fight. So during the fight, Monkey gets wounded, and then we find out Kubo goes to sleep, and she tells Beetle that whatever magic is keeping her in this monkey form is fading, and she'll eventually be gone. And Beetle says that he'll take care of him. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff that this movie's heavy. Like this kid just keeps getting kicked.
I mean, his life just like, I mean, starting out with just losing an eye and then everything else that's happening to him. He's not having a good time.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So then they make their way to, Kubo's told in a dream by an old man to go to, it's Hanzo's old temple, fortress, whatever. And that's where he can find the helmet that he needs. So they have the sword and they have the armor. They need the helmet. So they go to the helmet. And while they're there, they get attacked by the other sister. I guess the first one is dead. It feels like it wasn't. I wasn't sure. It wasn't really obvious the first watch through. But so the other one's there. So they get attacked by it. In this fight scene, then we find out that Beetle is actually Kubo's father.
And he's Hanzo.
Literally 10 seconds before he gets stabbed and killed.
That's exactly.
Again, let's just kick Kubo. You know, I've heard that often a mistake new writers make is they're way too nice to their protagonist. So good on everyone involved in this movie for just hating this kid, just hating him.
Exactly.
From the moment he was born, we're just gonna beat the crap out of this damn kid.
Yeah, it's funny that Travis Knight in the commentary, he was like talking about how they originally had Kubo as like a much younger child, and then like all this stuff that they put him through, they're like, he needs to be a little bit older, or else this is just so mean.
It's mean anyway.
I mean, it's all mean anyway. It's mean anyway, but he was like a 6-year-old, and they're like, this is not working. I think he needs to be at least 12.
Services is going to call us. So you find out Hanzo, and so with this revelation, you know, we now know that he spent this whole time with his parents and he never met his dad. Mm-hmm. And so he got to spend some time with his dad. So if we can rewind now, all the foreshadowing, like you talked about, Hanzo is kind of childlike and he was told not to touch things. I like that his mom at the beginning of the movie says, because Kubo asked what his dad was like, she goes, he was just like you. And so if you watch, they mirror each other. So she says, don't touch anything. And that's the first thing both of them do. Yeah. I think, and I like this idea that it's almost like the character note, like, especially with Beetle, you kind of, on some level, he knows who he is, because I think it's because he has this rapport. Like, he seems to be instantly drawn to Kubo because it's his son. Mm-hmm. And I love the idea of throughout this journey, Monkey and Beetle are flirting, because like these two can't help but be attracted to each other, which really, which I don't think we talked about, that kind of the setup to the prologue of this was that Kubo's mom was sent by, I guess her family, are they gods? Because they say they're from the heavens.
Something like that. Yeah.
And so her father, Kubo's grandfather, told Kubo's mother that she had to go down and kill Hanzo because anyone with this armor or this sword could defeat the heavens. So she was sent. Well, during their fight, they fall in love. They have a baby. So part of the reason her sisters hate her is because she betrayed their family. And so they kind of, so that's why I think they, you know, Beetle and Monkey are flirting throughout. And like, it's funny that she doesn't like him at first. And then they kind of end up being attracted to each other. And so great stuff.
Yeah. And like, even like earlier, like on the boat, there's, you know, a great moment, a note that I wrote down, that it's like when they're eating the sushi or whatever, they're eating the fish. It's like a family dinner, basically, is what it feels like. And it's like Kubo has parents again. Like, he has both his mother and his father. And at that moment, I didn't know that either of them were actually his parents, but it's so well done where it's like, you look back on it, you're like, oh, of course, that's what that moment is. And it's a nice little foreshadowing once you actually know who they are.
Yeah, although a part of me almost thinks, and it's all great. Again, this is part of like how well the story escalates. We keep getting new reveals. We keep learning new information. But that almost feels cruel to me. Like he finally, because Kubo says towards the end of the movie that he had never had a family dinner before, but he got one, but he didn't know it.
Yeah.
You almost feel he's like, might have savored it a little more if he knew it was a family dinner. And again, he finds out he finally gets to meet his dad, but he doesn't know it's his dad till 10 seconds before somebody stabs him in the back and kills him.
Yeah, and that's also the reason, like earlier in the movie when he's at the festival, when they're talking to the dead, like his dad doesn't show up because he's not dead yet. Which is why then later it does work.
Exactly.
But yeah, it is interesting how quickly that happens, where you find out and then he's dead. But I really like that Hanzo is, as Beetle, at least, isn't just like some like stiff, serious warrior. There's like a playfulness to him that I feel like typically you hear like, oh, your dad was this like big warrior and stuff, and like that turns them into like just some serious person. But I like that it's not that, and I like that it feels like a real family dynamic that people can relate to, rather than something that's maybe not as realistic to today.
Yeah.
If that makes
He's not
sense.
the one-dimensional stoic badass.
Yeah.
Which is not just a cliche. It also, what reason would Kubo or Monkey have to connect with this guy?
Right.
So I think that gives him a reason to connect with him. And again, Kubo asked at the beginning what his dad was like. And, when he wasn't fighting, and she talks about he's very funny and silly and that he was just warm and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So Kubo goes back to his village, and it turns out the bell in the village was the helmet. So he puts it on, and his grandfather comes, who doesn't seem very broken up about he's now down. He's got 3 dead daughters. Seems fine with it.
Yeah.
And he kind of, he turns into this giant, what do we call this, snake thing that flies.
Yeah.
And Kubo's fighting him. But I like that, Kubo's got his armor and he's got his helmet and he's got his sword. All 3 are ultimately useless. They don't help him. And, so Kubo fights his grandfather, and it doesn't work. And he's got his shamisen, and the strings are broken, and so he gets knocked away, and his armor and his sword don't work. But he's got 2 bracelets. One is made from the string from his father's bow, and one is made from a strand of his mother's hair. So he puts them on the shamisen, and then he puts his own hair on the shamisen. And so now with the 3 strings, so it's Kubo and the 2 strings, the 3 strings now make up the shamisen. And that becomes sort of that's where his magic has been the strongest, is through that. And so kind of this family uniting. It's great. It's a nice moment. And I love that that's basically how he defeats his grandfather. Is that he talks about, because it's interesting that his grandfather's called the Moon King, and he tries to just tear Kubo down. He spends less time trying to actually like bite him or eat him or anything like that. He's just trying to tear him down and tell him that, everything you loved is gone and all that. And Kubo tells him that, I have the memories of them, and that's the most powerful thing I can have. And that's basic. And he kind of uses the memories of all those that people in the village have lost. And that's kind of what I like. It doesn't kill his grandfather, the Moon King. It turns him back into an old man who's lost his memory.
Yeah.
And I like that because this movie is just kind of about growing up. And there was a part of me, because dreams are very prevalent in this film. And this analogy breaks down in several places, but almost is the whole thing with Monkey and Beetle a dream? Just this idea of, is the movie, I thought, and this is almost a cynical approach, but this is a pretty dark movie. This whole movie is sort of an analogy for Kubo coping with the death of his parents. And that's why, but I think that's why the armor protects him from feeling it, and the sword allows him to attack those feelings. And ultimately that fails. Yeah. It's not until he accepts that they're gone and the memory of them is the most powerful thing he has that he defeats the Moon King. His grandfather. And I almost think maybe part of this is his grandfather was able to accept it either. And I wonder if in his grief, he was pulling Kubo down. And so it's up to Kubo to sort of bring himself out of it, his grief, and bring his grandfather out of it. Now, again, some of this breaks down a little bit, but
no, I think that's definitely interesting thoughts on it. And I agree. I think,
and that's why I almost wonder, and I think the darkest interpretation I can have of that is, on some level, is Kubo contemplating suicide. He doesn't want to live without his family because when he's back at the village where it's safe and comfortable, the Moon King calls it hell. there's during the boat fight when Monkey and the aunt is fighting, the sister, they keep calling it down here, but they never say what down here is. And I think the Moon King calls it down here as well. And I'm unfortunately blanking on, I know there's a quick exchange between the sister and Monkey where she says something about down here. And I don't know if Monkey says something about down here memories are made or something like that. Like there's something poignant to that, but they keep calling it. So it's almost, is his journey, is it depression? You know, is that what it is? I even like at the very beginning, Kubo says to Monkey, do you ever say anything encouraging? And Monkey says, I encourage you not to die. Literally something his mom would probably tell him if he has gotten to that bad of a spot. I'm sucking all the fun out of this movie. But I thought that was really, I think that's it. It's a good just analogy of I think what the movie's about. Like you'd almost think Kubo's a real person and this whole movie is a dream of his, and how do we accept it? And that idea that rather than protecting ourselves from it, rather than trying to fight it, what if we accept it? And what if the memories are all we have? And I think that's why he does have the memory of having a nice family dinner, about getting to spend time with his parents, because he misses that.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Oof. I don't know if I can follow
your
that.
move, Reese.
No, that's
Josh is like, I like monkeys.
I like no, I like that interpretation a lot. And I think, and what follows then once his grandfather is like back in his human form and with his memories gone, I love what the town does here and what, how, you know, Kubo's been telling stories to them for, I'm assuming years, and like just telling the story that they kind of help him out with, rather than like, you know, telling his grandfather, oh, you know, you're terrible, you did all this stuff, and like banishing him or killing him even. They fill him with like positive memories of who he could be and what he should be. And even like the funny thing with the little girls, like, oh, you give me, I think she says like, you give me candy every day or something like that.
You give me $1 every day or something like that.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
And I love how,
just funny stuff.
No grown-up goes, hang on a second, every grown-up.
Yeah.
And it's just a thing where it's like, do you think everyone else would jump on that? You gave me $1. You gave me a back rub every day.
Exactly. But I love that it's like, what they do for him, in that, you know, he's lost so much already that he doesn't need to lose more, even though he's never known his grandfather, but it's really the last thing that he has. And just kind of this theme of forgiveness in the end, and compassion for, you know, there's, you know, all the hate that his grandfather had and all that he was going through, he's still able to, this town is still able to help him cope with the loss of his parents in a way to not have him lose even more. I thought that was like just really powerful and
yet,
really
and
cool.
I do love that there's, as the town kind of tells him that all, as they're telling him who he is, or who they want him to be, it kind of culminates in that old woman, saying that, and we have something in common. We all love your grandson. And I think it's interesting that they say something about like his your grandson will take care of you or protect you or something like that. And I love that there's such a subtlety to that. Speaking of, I wonder how many times they had to reanimate this scene, because there's such a subtlety where for a second you do see, and understandably, Kubo might be like, no, fuck this guy. Like, he killed my parents. Like, no, he's a dick. But you can see this hesitation, but also the lessons he's learned tell him, no, let's, he accepts his grandfather, and you don't need more of this. What else are we going to do? So I think that's great. I think there's such a subtlety to that, that I think would be so challenging in this medium to be able to pull off something like that. And you know what it reminded me of is it reminds me of like the Apes movies, you know, that have been coming out that it's all CG, and like how do you make me feel empathy for a monkey? And for this, it's like it's so subtle in those facial expressions. And you know, these puppets are made of, I forgot what they're actually made of, but yeah, like to have that subtlety in their expressions is incredible that they pulled that off.
It really is. Yeah.
Actually, going back to my really dark interpretation of this movie, another thing I thought that kind of lent itself to me thinking that maybe his grandfather is someone that was wallowing in grief was Kubo asks his mom, what does he want from me? Mm-hmm. And that he wants his other eye. So he says something, so you can't see humanity. And Kubo says right before he like defeats the snake monster thing, he says, you want to take my eye so I can't see the love in another's eyes. And I think again, that's, if Kubo can't see that, he's not going to have a reason to live. I think he has to understand he can find love in other places and along with his memories. So
it's powerful stuff.
What'd your kids think? Did they think the same thing? I think did they think it was about suicide?
I didn't watch with the kids yet, but although I still want to. I think I still want to.
I also think this is a movie that wouldn't haunt kids as much as, like, it's one of those things where it's like give kids a little credit. I think they would enjoy it. I don't know about the youngest, but you know, I think kids of a certain age would still enjoy it, and it's visual and it's fun and it's funny and
no, I agree. And one other technical thing I wanted to bring up about like the Moon King when he turns into his big dragon whatever thing is something that was really interesting was that their model for that creature was a 3-foot model. For whatever reason they didn't build it to be proportionally accurate to how Kubo was. So like you were saying before, when they would shoot, like you were wondering if they shot these characters kind of separately and put them in together. In this case, they actually did. And so they would have to, so what they had to do was like, they did Kubo's animation for this sequence, and then they did the Moon Beast separately, and then they had to replicate the camera moves exactly how they had done for each of them. But what was interesting was that their proportions were different. So they had to do math to actually adjust the camera moves because the Moon Beast was actually much smaller than it should have been for the proportion. So that the complication of making the camera moves match for that. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No,
but,
I get it.
It's hard to explain, like to make those camera moves match by having to adjust them to the proportions of these characters and the models that they created. Just kind of makes my head hurt.
I wonder why because it's big. His little monster form is big. So I wonder why they didn't. I mean, you already built your 16-foot skeleton. Why not build? Yeah. I don't know. And I guess, does it make sense to build an 10-foot snake monster thing?
Yeah.
Does it make sense to do that? And yeah, if you can just kind of do the math to get the proportions right, readjust it. Maybe probably easier to work with than a 10-foot snake.
Probably. Another cool thing they did was they painted, like they got that glowing effect by painting it with kind of ultraviolet paint and using black lights. And then also they said that they put Mylar balloons like underneath the scales to like kind of give some shininess to it. So it's pretty cool, like the different things that they come up with to make these things look a certain way.
And again, something they didn't have to do. You could have done it in post.
Yeah.
But that makes it better because then when that snake is going through the village and he's going through the trees, that light from him bounces off of, it's reflected in other obstacles. So it makes it feel more like he's there.
Mm-hmm.
It adds that sort of realism to it.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out as well to our friend Andrew Nillette, who is a huge LAIKA fan.
Mm-hmm.
And he helped me make this connection that I didn't know, that Travis Knight is the son of Phil Knight, one of the founders of Nike.
Okay.
And they actually do, every LAIKA film, they put out a Nike custom shoe.
Really?
Yeah. And I looked them up and they're pretty cool. These ones are pretty cool. They're like black. I don't know shoes, but they're like these black Jordans that have like blue. They're kind of blue on one side and red on the other side to show the two sides there. But I looked it up and I could get a pair in my size for $700. So there's that, they're very limited.
Go ahead, man. You've earned it.
But
$700.
Yeah. But they're pretty cool. I was looking up the ones for the different movies and definitely tough to get your hands on.
That's cool. That is very, very cool. Yeah. So, this movie, it's full of imagination. It's such a story, well written. You'll cry your eyes out. My God.
Yes.
It is so emotional. And actually I do want to give, and so much of the writing is great, but and I don't know if I've ever said it before on this podcast that I just, there's certain writing cliches I hate. There's certain lines I think writers overuse. I also think, to get dramatic one-liners, I think writers will just they will come up with the most convoluted dialogue just so they can get like a dramatic one-liner. I do always like that CinemaSins on YouTube points out people will play the pronoun game. Somebody will say like, I can't believe he's back. Who's back? My father. No one would ever say that. That's not how people talk. Right. And I only bring that up to say, it's why I love the reveal of Monkey is Kubo's mom, where she's on the boat and she's fighting the sister, and the sister says something about, and there's a good build up to it. I don't remember the whole thing, but just that the sister says, love made my sister weak. And she says, no, it made me stronger. Like, that's great stuff. Right before she cuts her in half or something like that. Like that's called good writing, children. It's not forced. It was organic. That's how a person, or in this case, a monkey, would talk. I told you recently, I hate the line, it's usually about God. I don't believe in him. Well, he believes in you. And I want to throw up. I believe I'll throw up. That's what I believe. Fucking trash. But yes, excellent script. And actually, I should have wrote down some examples of this to prove my point. The editing on this is phenomenal. Like, just transitions from one shot to the next, just using cuts for humor, using cuts for, actually a great one is when he first meets his aunt and he's standing on the bank of the river, and I think you hear the sister say his name, and then they just cut to a wide shot and she's just standing there, and it scares the crap out of you.
It scares. Yeah.
It's dark.
It's very true. It reminds me a lot of, like, to go to a horror movie. I don't know if you've ever seen The Strangers, where there's like a reveal of one of the people like in the house in The Strangers, and it's just this wide shot and you just see him like walk into the room, and it's like one of the most terrifying shots that I've ever seen. And this one, and I love that you said that, like, the reveal is just this wide shot of her just standing there, and it's just the environment and the character there is so scary.
And I think all those great edits and stuff like that, that's what, like, they said they used 3 years to develop the script and storyboards. That's using those 3 years effectively. That is making a point to make every shot count, and really planning this out. This is the problem with certainly sequels getting just crapped out. There's lots of examples of directors making a great movie and the studio says, well, we want you to make a sequel. It's going to release in 2 years. And the director says, no.
Yeah.
I think Martin Campbell is the best example. That's GoldenEye, right? GoldenEye and Casino Royale, and they wanted him to crap out sequels in 2 years. He said that's not possible, and so he walked away.
No.
But it's just it's such a movie made with time and love and just passion. Although I think I did hear Travis Scott say he'd rather die than make a sequel. Maybe he doesn't like sequels.
I wouldn't want to see.
Yeah, and that's it. Why would you ruin this? It's perfect.
Yeah,
just a fantastic movie. I wanted to see, I forget what the budget was, but I think we said, so this budget was $60 million and it made, according to IMDb, it made 76. I'm like you, I read 73.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think they spent 60 million promoting this.
Yeah, probably not. But they spent more than 13, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's unfortunate that they didn't. Hopefully it made it up, but yeah, it's just a fun movie. It's a breeze to watch, and you know, if you think there's nothing good out there, you gotta check out this movie. It's it's really great. And you know what? It is kind of. It doesn't feel like, say, a Pixar movie, but it has something for everyone. I think. But you know, as we've been talking about, I don't think very young kids might get scared by it, but I think I don't know, kids somewhere about 8 and up maybe would probably still enjoy the visuals and just like the world of it. And it's a fun movie. It's very funny.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a similar, like, you know, there's movies like Coco, which, you know, deal with like the dead and everything, which is, you know, and that's a great movie for kids. So I definitely think that kids could watch this and enjoy it a lot. And maybe not, they wouldn't take away, you know, all the deeper things within it, but definitely could enjoy it.
And I suppose that was the talk around, like, specifically Coraline, because that movie was, as I understand, pretty creepy. And like, do you take a kid to see this and stuff like that? But
right.
Yeah. Excellent movie. Josh, you like this movie?
I really like this movie.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you for finally making me watch it.
Well, that's all.
I'm glad I did.
That's all I've got. You got anything else?
No. Just check it out if you missed it.
Cool. Check it out in case you missed it. And next time we said we were going to watch for next month, we'll be doing Inside Llewyn Davis.
Yes,
which, like,
sir.
Moneyball is a movie Josh watches 40 times a year.
I haven't seen this quite as much as Moneyball, but we'll get into it once we talk about
Let's
it.
not start.
I think you'll see my feelings on it.
So I'm looking forward to that. And we have both seen that movie before, but Josh,
I think we saw it together, right?
Probably.
Did we see it? I think we did.
I think we did too. I just watched you fall in love. It was weird. I moved away from you.
I wish I had that moment to myself, but you know.
So, anyways, everybody, thanks for listening. We greatly appreciate it. Kubo and the Two Strings. Check it out. And we'll see everybody next time.
See you, everybody. Thank you.